No emotions. Just wanna quit tennis right now, but we'll see. We'll see in a few days. Hopefully I'll get back on track.
Do they have the rage rooms here in Paris?
They have everything in Paris.
You got everything in Paris, okay. Oh, I was feeling sad, actually. I was kind of like taking on her emotions, a lot of empathy.
What happens when one of tennis's greatest champions delivers a thoughtful message that many fans believe was directed, even if indirectly, toward one of the sport's biggest current stars? That question has become the center of an intense discussion involving Venus Williams. Throughout her extraordinary career, Venus has earned countless titles beyond Grand Slam champion. She has been a trailblazer, an entrepreneur, and one of the fiercest competitors the game has ever witnessed. Having experienced unforgettable triumphs, heartbreaking defeats, and the relentless pressure that comes with competing at the highest level, her perspective on overcoming adversity carries unusual weight whenever she chooses to share it. Speaking about the emotional impact of losing, Venus acknowledged that every player eventually experiences painful defeats, and explained that the most difficult part is often not losing to an opponent, but dealing with the feeling of having disappointed yourself. She admitted that this kind of self-inflicted disappointment can be incredibly difficult to process, and that it often leads to sleepless nights, emotions that virtually every professional athlete encounters at some point. Those comments quickly sparked widespread debate, because many observers believe they closely related to Aryna Sabalenka's emotional response following a difficult loss. Venus also pointed out that despite Sabalenka's frustration, many players on tour would gladly exchange places with her considering the remarkable season she had already produced, suggesting that the disappointment may have amplified the situation beyond what it truly represented. The conversation became even more intriguing because some fans began wondering whether Venus's outlook also helped explain her decision to partner with Alex Eala at the 2026 Bad Homburg tournament. Sabalenka had arrived at Roland Garros carrying enormous expectations as a multiple Grand Slam champion renowned for her explosive power and fearless style of play. She was widely considered one of the strongest favorites to contend for the title. However, tennis has always been a sport capable of humbling even its greatest champions. When her campaign ended earlier than expected, public attention quickly shifted away from the result itself and toward her emotional reaction afterward. Sabalenka openly admitted that the defeat had affected her deeply, revealing that she briefly questioned her future in the sport, offering fans a rare glimpse into the immense psychological burden elite athletes carry behind the scenes. Her honesty resonated with many supporters because defeat hurts regardless of accomplishments, and often the hardest battle comes from feeling that you have failed your own expectations, rather than simply losing to another competitor. For many fans, her vulnerability felt genuine and relatable. Others, however, questioned whether greatness should also be measured by the way champions respond when everything falls apart. That is where Venus Williams' perspective suddenly became impossible to overlook, and where the discussion took an entirely new direction. While many people rallied around Sabalenka and praised her willingness to openly express her emotions, Venus viewed the situation through a broader lens. She did not deny that professional athletes experience frustration, disappointment, and self-doubt just like everyone else. Instead, she emphasized that these emotions are universal within elite competition and should not cause players to lose sight of the bigger picture. Her central message was both straightforward and powerful. Every champion eventually suffers painful defeats. Every elite competitor goes through periods of uncertainty, and everyone has nights when disappointment makes it difficult to sleep. The true challenge lies not in avoiding those emotions, but in learning how to manage them without allowing them to overshadow everything else. Without directly criticizing Sabalenka, Venus suggested that the reaction itself had become larger than the setback that caused it. She explained that disappointment is an unavoidable part of professional tennis and cautioned that focusing too heavily on a single loss can cause athletes to overlook the many accomplishments they have already achieved. The comment that attracted the most attention came when Venus observed that numerous players across the tour would gladly trade careers with Sabalenka despite the struggles she had been describing. In other words, even during what Sabalenka considered a disappointing period, she was still enjoying a level of success that countless professionals spend an entire lifetime trying to reach. That perspective completely changed the discussion. Was Sabalenka simply expressing honest emotion during a vulnerable moment, Or was she unintentionally diminishing her own achievements by concentrating solely on one painful result? Venus appeared to lean toward the latter interpretation. Her belief seemed to be that true champions never lose sight of the broader perspective. One difficult week, one disappointing tournament, or one painful defeat does not erase months of hard-earned success. It does not erase championship titles, important victories, or the status a player has earned among the world's elite. By allowing a temporary setback to dominate the narrative of her season, Venus appeared to suggest that Sabalenka was letting frustration overshadow the reality of everything she had already accomplished. That is why her comments resonated so powerfully throughout the tennis world. They extended far beyond a single match or one emotional press conference, and instead addressed a much larger conversation about resilience, perspective, and the qualities that truly distinguish great players from legendary champions when adversity inevitably arrives. From Venus Williams' point of view, this is the lesson many people overlook. The trophies remain, the ranking remains, and the achievements built over months and years do not. Venus' central message was clear. Accomplishments do not suddenly lose their value because of a few disappointing tournaments. Victories remain part of a player's legacy. Prize money has already been earned, reputations are built over years of excellence, and the privileges that come with being among the world's elite do not disappear after a temporary setback. That was the essence of what she wanted to communicate. One difficult stretch should never outweigh everything that came before it, and when an athlete becomes so consumed by what went wrong that they lose sight of everything they have already achieved, Venus appeared to believe that perspective becomes unfair, not only to the sport itself but also to the player carrying that emotional burden. Then came the remark that immediately dominated headlines. Displaying the same direct honesty and confidence that have defined her throughout her remarkable career, Venus offered an unexpected piece of advice. She suggested that if frustration had become impossible to manage, perhaps the better solution was not another emotional public statement, but a visit to a rage room instead. It was unmistakably classic Venus, blunt, slightly humorous, and delivered with the authority of someone who has spent decades surviving the intense pressures of elite competition. The comment stood out because it perfectly reflected the mindset that has allowed her to overcome countless challenges throughout her career. Acknowledge the frustration, release the emotion, and keep moving forward without allowing one painful moment to define the entire story. The discussion became even more compelling when attention shifted to her decision to partner with Alex Eala at the Bad Homburg tournament ahead of Wimbledon. What initially appeared to be a routine question about doubles soon revealed something much deeper. Venus explained that she was never searching simply for a player capable of hitting the ball harder than everyone else because raw power alone was never the quality she valued most. Instead, she wanted a partner who understood the rhythm of a match, someone capable of changing the pace, creating uncomfortable patterns for opponents, and solving problems through intelligence rather than relying exclusively on force. She spoke about the importance of variety, tactical awareness, creative angles, delicate touch, and the ability to adapt whenever pressure intensified. In many respects, her description perfectly matched the qualities that have made Alex Eala one of the most intriguing young talents in professional tennis. While many players depend primarily on overwhelming power, Alex has built her game around creativity, exceptional court awareness, and the ability to think several shots ahead. She disrupts opponents' timing, forces them into uncomfortable decisions, and consistently creates opportunities that others might never recognize. Those strengths become especially valuable on grass courts, where rallies can change direction in an instant, and intelligent adaptation often proves more effective than sheer power alone. As a result, Venus' praise for Alex began to sound like much more than a simple compliment. It resembled an endorsement of an entirely different philosophy of tennis. When those observations are considered alongside everything Venus had already said about resilience, maintaining perspective, and responding constructively to adversity, the connection becomes difficult to overlook. She was not merely discussing shot selection or doubles tactics. She was identifying the personal qualities she values most in elite competitors: composure under pressure, intelligence in decision-making, adaptability during difficult moments, and the determination to continue moving forward regardless of circumstances. Those are precisely the characteristics she appears to recognize in Alex Eala, and they may explain why their partnership attracted so much attention as Wimbledon approached. That is also where the story becomes especially compelling. On one side stood Venus Williams, who had just delivered a powerful message about how true champions should respond when adversity strikes, questioning whether highly public displays of frustration ultimately strengthen or weaken an athlete's long-term mindset. On the other side, she was speaking with genuine admiration about Alex Eala, highlighting qualities that represented an almost opposite approach to handling difficult situations. The contrast was impossible to miss. Venus was not focused on rankings, trophies, or recent results. Instead, she emphasized character, decision-making, and the way a player responds when events fail to unfold as planned. Having observed Alex closely, she saw a competitor who understands that tennis is about far more than simply hitting harder than the opponent. She recognized a player who intelligently changes pace, creates difficult angles, mixes spins effectively, and patiently constructs points rather than attempting to overpower every rally. Perhaps even more importantly, Venus admired the maturity with which Alex handled adversity. Like every professional athlete, Alex had experienced disappointing results in difficult periods, yet Venus' admiration was never based solely on victories. She respected the manner in which Alex carried herself through those setbacks. That distinction is significant because winning can come and go, but character is what remains when success becomes harder to find. Increasingly, Alex's reputation has become defined not by avoiding defeat, but by learning from it. She studies every setback, makes meaningful adjustments, returns stronger, and refuses to let one disappointing week erase years of steady progress. Rather than collapsing under disappointment or dwelling endlessly on what went wrong, she continues to move forward with resilience, composure, and the determination to keep improving. Rather than focusing on isolated moments, the real lesson lies in a deeper philosophy, the understanding that true development is often forged through adversity rather than easy victories. For someone like Venus, whose remarkable career has been shaped by decades of experiencing both the exhilarating triumphs and painful disappointments that define professional tennis, those character traits carry enormous significance. They frequently separate athletes who enjoy brief periods of success from those capable of building legacies that endure for generations. Seen from that perspective, Venus' admiration for Alex Eala becomes far easier to understand because her praise extends well beyond natural ability. What impressed her was a mindset built on resilience, emotional discipline, and the capacity to stay composed even when circumstances become difficult or uncomfortable. Unsurprisingly, those observations prompted many fans and analysts to draw comparisons with Aryna Sabalenka. Throughout her career, Sabalenka's fierce competitiveness and emotional intensity have fueled some of the most commanding performances in women's tennis, making those qualities central to her success. At the same time, those powerful emotions have occasionally attracted just as much attention during heartbreaking defeats, with discussions after several high-profile losses often shifting away from the tennis itself and focusing instead on her visible frustration, emotional responses, or tense interactions with the media. Whether those judgments were entirely justified or not, such moments inevitably became part of the public narrative. That is precisely why Venus' remarks resonated so strongly. They were never really centered on a single press conference, one tournament, or even one individual player. Instead, they touched on a much larger question that every professional athlete eventually confronts. When everything begins to unravel, what image do you present to the world? Do you allow disappointment to dictate the story? Or do you transform that setback into motivation for the next chapter of your journey? Venus appeared to suggest that the answer to that question may ultimately shape an athlete's legacy far more profoundly than any individual championship ever could. As the debate continued, many observers began examining a broader pattern instead of concentrating on one isolated incident. Following several notable defeats, critics highlighted occasions where Sabalenka's reactions seemed to reveal just how difficult those losses were for her to process. Fairly or unfairly, some believed there were instances when attention drifted away from celebrating her opponent's outstanding performance and instead centered on external explanations, lingering frustrations, or emotional responses surrounding the result. That perception became increasingly woven into her public image, particularly after emotionally charged defeats against younger competitors who had simply delivered exceptional tennis on the day. Then came Roland Garros, where the disappointment appeared to reach an even greater intensity. The emotional aftermath ignited widespread discussion, dividing fans between those who appreciated her honesty and vulnerability, and those who felt her response reflected a deeper challenge in coping with setbacks. The reason this conversation carries such significance is because tennis is, by its very nature, a sport built around loss. Even the greatest champions in history spend far more time dealing with defeat than standing on podiums holding trophies, making the ability to absorb disappointment, learn valuable lessons from it, and continue moving forward every bit as essential as raw talent itself. That reality makes the comparison with Alex Eala especially compelling. At only 20 years old, Eala is experiencing one of the most exciting breakthroughs in women's tennis, with her recent performances dramatically reshaping expectations surrounding her future while capturing the attention of fans across the globe. She steps onto the court carrying confidence, momentum, and an increasingly convincing belief that she belongs among the sport's elite competitors. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of her rise is not simply the victories she continues to collect, but the calm composure that accompanies each success. Winning has not altered her mindset or her approach. She remains balanced, disciplined, and grounded, displaying a level of emotional maturity that many professionals spend years trying to develop. Throughout her impressive grass court campaign, she defeated established stars while consistently showcasing the tactical intelligence that has become one of her defining strengths. Rather than relying exclusively on overwhelming power, she adjusts to changing situations, solves problems as they emerge, and repeatedly discovers new ways to secure victories. Perhaps even more impressive than her results, however, is the way she carries the growing weight of expectations. Every breakthrough performance creates additional pressure, every upset victory attracts greater attention, and every headline raises the stakes for what comes next. Even so, Eala continues to conduct herself with a quiet confidence and steady composure that suggests she already understands a lesson many athletes spend entire careers trying to master, that both success and failure are temporary, while the commitment to the work itself must remain constant. The daily work never changes. The commitment to preparation remains constant, and the mentality stays firmly rooted regardless of victory or defeat. Perhaps that unwavering approach is exactly what Venus Williams recognizes when she looks at Alex Eala. Beyond the explosive ground strokes, impressive movement, and natural shot-making ability, Venus appears to see something even more valuable: a mindset capable of withstanding the countless challenges that every elite career eventually brings. Raw talent may create opportunities, but it is resilience that allows those opportunities to grow into lasting success. With Wimbledon drawing closer and the attention surrounding Eala becoming stronger than ever, that distinction could prove more significant than any technical aspect of her game. The conversation is no longer centered on whether she possesses the ability to compete with the world's best, because her performances have already answered that question. What many are now watching is whether the mental toughness she has displayed throughout her remarkable ascent can continue carrying her to even greater heights. Judging by everything that has unfolded so far, there are plenty who believe it absolutely can. In fact, that emotional strength may ultimately become the defining characteristic that separates Eala from many other promising young players. Setbacks are unavoidable in professional tennis, yet she rarely allows them to dictate her story. Losing a set never appears to become a personal crisis, and an unexpected defeat is never treated as the moment that defines her career. Instead, she evaluates what happened, identifies the necessary adjustments, and immediately shifts her attention toward the next opportunity. It is precisely the kind of quality that seasoned champions recognize almost instantly because they understand how incredibly difficult it is to develop. Exceptional talent may be enough to win individual matches, but maintaining the right perspective is what enables athletes to navigate the emotional highs and lows that inevitably accompany a long professional career. That helps explain why Venus Williams' admiration for Eala seems to extend far beyond their doubles partnership, or any short-term results they may achieve together. She appears to recognize in the young Filipina many of the same characteristics that sustained her own legendary journey through decades at the highest level: patience, resilience, composure, and an unwavering ability to remain focused even when circumstances become challenging. Throughout her own career, Venus has never measured greatness solely by trophies collected or rankings achieved. Instead, she has believed that true greatness reveals itself during the moments when victories disappear, confidence is tested, and accepting responsibility becomes far more difficult than making excuses. Those are the moments that expose an athlete's genuine character. Judging by the way she has spoken about Eala, Venus clearly believes the young Filipina already possesses that rare and invaluable foundation. That is also why her comments generated such widespread attention. On one side stood a broader discussion about the way elite competitors respond to disappointment and adversity, while on the other stood Venus publicly choosing to team up with one of tennis' fastest rising stars while openly praising the very qualities that so many believe determine lasting success. Whether intentional or simply coincidental, the contrast created a compelling narrative. It was never truly about placing individual players side by side, but rather about emphasizing an enduring philosophy, one that values resilience over emotional reaction, continuous growth over lingering frustration, and steady consistency over dramatic emotional swings. As Wimbledon approaches, Eala's performances will undoubtedly continue attracting headlines and growing expectations. Yet perhaps the most meaningful story will not be measured by the number of matches she wins, but by the mentality she continues to strengthen throughout the journey. After all, every gifted player experiences moments of triumph, and every gifted player eventually experiences defeat. The athletes who leave an unforgettable legacy are usually those who learn to embrace both with equal maturity. And if Venus Williams' assessment proves accurate, Alex Eala may already be developing the exact qualities that could allow her to become one of those rare competitors who leave a lasting mark on the sport.